This is the
Five Stars
Podcast.
Let me talk to you. This is such good shit.
How's it going, everyone? It is Monday, October 4, 2021, and you are currently tuned into the Five Starr Wrestling Report podcast. If it is your first time checking out the show, awesome sauce. Thanks for stopping in. Make sure you subscribe and rate this video for me. And also, do me a favor and leave a comment down below so that I can get your feedback about the shows we discussed today. Got 2 shows weekly here on YouTube that we host. Got a Monday show where we recap AEW Rampage, NWA Powerrr, and over the course of the next few weeks, I will be covering the G1 tournament with New Japan. And got the Friday show where we recap AEW Dynamite, NXT TV, as well as more G1 coverage. And in the future, probably within the next few weeks, once we sort of phase out of the G1 Climax, I'll probably go back to the standard format with the Monday shows, and I'll talk about some of the weekend events and pay-per-view events. I'll still cover like the major pay-per-views from Dynamite or from AEW, NXT, that kind of thing. But for the time being, I'm just going to focus on using the G1 as my third topical point for these videos, just for time's sake. In addition to watching here on YouTube, you can also feel free to check me out on Rumble. Link for that will always be in the description below. And finally, make sure you guys check me out with my article content over at the Chairshot. I write opinion articles each week for the site, usually between 3 and 4 pieces. And if you head over to www.chairshot.com, click under the opinion tab, you will usually find my work labeled under the name Star. I write on various topics from various companies just to make sure I'm keeping some form of continuity with everything. So if you like variety, if that's your flavor, you definitely enjoy my content. Usually between 600 and 1,000 words, so they're relatively short reads. And I try to be as insightful as I possibly can. All that said, I think we got the plugs out of the way here. So we're ready to dive into the show. So without further ado, let's get going. I had a hell of a time getting through this show on Friday without having to take a drink of water every 5 seconds, so hopefully I'm in a better state of mind to do it this time, or at least my throat's in a better state to do it, but we'll see how that goes. Anyway, as always, we will kickstart things by talking about Rampage from Friday night, and this was the October 1st edition of the show. Well, kind of knew heading into the show that it was going to be a bitter pill to swallow. The question is, how bad did that pill taste on the way down? I'll at least say this out of the gate. The 2-man commentary team for the opener was a huge breath of fresh air. I don't like Excalibur as a play-by-play guy, but when he's got Taz as a dance partner in the booth, and it's not congested with 3 or 4 guys constantly talking over one another at a given time, it does make for a better show. So, I know it was merely temporary until Ricky Starks came out later on, but I really do think AEW needs to take note of the first quarter commentary because it really made all the difference in the world. And Bryan Danielson versus Nick Jackson in the opener. Well, Bryan did it once with Kenny Omega. Can he capture lightning in a bottle twice and pull a good match out of flipping McGillicuddy? Well, for lack of better terms, sure as hell was the best thing I've seen involving a Beta Bucks match in a long time. Almost made up for that abortion of a cage match I watched at the All Out pay-per-view. Yeah, the crazy thing is, by Beta Bucks standards, most people would probably argue this is average at best, but I ended up enjoying it. Brian's a great worker, so he pretty much handcuffed Nick into working his style, and believe me, it was better off. Brian controlled the offense early on by working Nick on the mat with some chain holds. They had Brian miss the running dropkick in the corner for the heat. I really liked the spot where Nick kept going for the yes kicks on Brian, but Brian just kept leaning into him a little bit with each shot that he fired. And then he eventually came back with a flurry of offense. They ended up fighting out on the apron where Brian posted his shin, and both men ended up down on the mat. Brian gives Nick some elbows to the head, locks in the cattle mutilation, and forces a clean tap out. Good stuff. Yeah, for a match involving one of the Bucks, I couldn't find much fault with it. I did kind of think it was weird that they did the shin injury angle with like maybe 2 to 3 minutes left in the match. Probably felt they could have milked that a little bit more, but I mean, that's just a nitpick at the end of the day. Even all the comedy BS with Cutler was kept to a bare minimum for a change. And the spot where Nick accidentally kicked Cutler in the face was funny, and purely because of Taz's reaction to it alone. Yeah, in a lot of ways, much of what I said about the Jungle Boy Adam Cole match from Wednesday kind of ties into my thoughts here. It's good to have the CM Punks, the Bryan Danielsons, and the Adam Coles around, particularly for conditions like this, where guys that typically try to work these breakneck indie spot fest cockjerker matches, they actually learn how to work a pro wrestling match. Ain't wrestling fucking amazing sometimes when guys actually learn to work instead of relying on cartwheels and tumbling gymnastics. It's just a shame that we're going to see the polar opposite of this match when we get to that 8-man tag on Dynamite Wednesday, but whatever. Be right back to Beta Bug's business as usual. They just can't help themselves. Had a quick Ricky Starks pre-tape to hype up a match with Brian Cage somewhere down the pike. Real simple promo, but God, did it quickly establish how underrated Ricky Starks is. And another quick CM Punk promo where basically he just said a lot of guys are gunning for him right now, and pretty soon he's going to be taking the next major step for his career. I guess he means the part where he actually does something of value on the show instead of commentary and boring pre-tapes. Oops, did I say that out loud? My bad. Then we had Jade Cargill, Nyla Rose, and Thunder Rosa in a three-way. And I guess a better way to sum this up is Thunder Rosa trying to pull a good match out of two broomsticks. God love her, she tried. But even Thunder Rosa is not a miracle worker. Anyway, I guess AEW operates under the same rules as WWE with 3-ways and 4-ways. DQs? Nah, dog. Y'all just go out there and you just do a bunch of garbage hardcore stuff and y'all just hit each other with plunder and then I will be right with the world. It's all good. In other words, hey, we know you guys can't work, so just go hit each other with shit and people will pop. Yeah, worked in 1997, not so much in 2021. And by the way, what was Thunder Rosa's reward for prying a halfway tolerable TV match out of two left-footed klutzes? Well, she got to do the job for Jade. Wrong girl won. And I'll say this for all you nut huggers out there that think AEW always listens to their audience. You want to explain to me why, despite Thunder Rosa clearly being the most over and talented female in this match by a country mile, they still insist on pushing Jade Cargill, who can't wrestle her way out of a paper bag? You come back to me when you figure that one out. And then we had our Outlaw main event of Orange Cassidy versus Jack Evans in a hair versus hair match. And to tell you the truth, the real question wasn't who was going to get their head shaved. I think the real question here was, would the damn clippers actually work? I mean, I can bitch up a storm about it if I really had the energy, but why was this on television? You know where a match like this belongs? AEW Dark. You want to have your Bush League indie matches? Be my guest. But book them where they belong. You got a bloated roster full of real talent that really need the spotlight right now. And I can assure you that two guys that do not need that spotlight are the two indie clowns that were present in this match of Orange Cassidy and Jack Evans. These guys aren't drawing money. They're not ever going to elevate the quality of the product in any way. They're never going anywhere on the card beyond their current states right now. And I can promise you that no money is being made of value right now by seeing Jack Evans get his head shaved. It's Jack Evans. Who cares? And I know, I can already hear the mob right now. Oh, you heartless bastard. They had a nice homage to Brody Lee after the show, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. I'll humor you. Get a better idea. How about you just do a dark angle after the show where Jack Evans gets his head shaved? You can do your Brody Lee acknowledgement. The heels retreat like cowards. Babyfaces can all celebrate and get a laugh over humiliating the heels. You bring out the sun, which I'm still really uncomfortable about with that whole deal, but I don't need to get into that right now. But you can do everything you did here as it was laid out. The point is, don't put this crap on television, guys. This is not good. And I don't even want to get into the whole spiel about whether or not Orange Cassidy sucks, because I'll be here for hours. He's a gimmick with a very loyal but substream fan base. I get he's a big merch seller, but at some point you got to play your cards right. And you got to put out the best hand you have at your disposal. You're trying to build an audience and a fan base. Or at least, ideally, that should be your goal if you ever want to evolve beyond where you are right now as a company. A mainstream casual viewer of this product is not going to watch an Orange Cassidy match and take your product seriously. I'm not saying he doesn't have a place. I'm not saying you can't feature him in small doses here and there. Because, I think there are points where a character like Orange Cassidy does add value to the show. But devoting an entire segment to him and risking people turning the show off because they're getting nothing but 15 minutes of stupid comedy and goofy wrestling? You have 80-some guys that are way better suited for TV time right now than a match that could have easily been done on Dark or, done as a post-show angle to send the crowd home happy. And I think I'll just leave it at that because I don't want to keep harping on something that'll never get resolved. Cassidy's not my flavor, but I'm trying to look at the bigger picture here. Booking main event comedy angles like this are a surefire way to turn casual viewers away, because all they do when they see stuff like this is shake their heads. And, for my money, if Rampage is supposed to be on par with Dynamite in terms of high-quality programming, you need to avoid this kind of shit. Because all this does is just destroy the credibility of your second-tier program. So, this show was a rough one for me. Started off great with the Danielson-Jackson match, but things really tanked for the remainder of the program after that opener. Thank God it was only an hour. That's all I can say. And that brings us to NWA Powerrr. And this was the September 28th edition of the show. And it looks like we're actually back to the regular Powerrr formatting instead of the Power Surge that I unintentionally recapped last week. We begin the show with a pretty high-intensity angle. Tim Storm was supposed to conduct an interview with Strictly Business, but well, suffice it to say, things got quickly heated. Latimer ended up getting in Storm's face, basically challenging him to grow a pair, and that led to Tim heading down to the ring to pick a fight with these clowns. So the heels all bordered the ring, got up on the apron, and that is when Nick Aldis came down and basically told everyone to fuck off. And had they cut the segment right there, it probably would have been fine. But I guess someone in the production staff was watching their Raw clips and said, You know what would be a great idea? Let's have all this come down to separate everyone, and then we'll just have everyone awkwardly stand in the ring for several minutes while the crowd starts chanting, "We want wrestling." Yeah, not really sure why they needed to drag this out that long. Aside from that awkward exchange, I liked it. I think Aldis has basically switched babyface by all accounts. So, if they're going for the slow burning dissension with the strictly business group, I can get behind that. In the meantime, it gives something for Aldis to do beyond the world title picture. I just wish I had the opportunity to see more of this group's formation before I got away from following NWA product post-pandemic. Because I really don't know a whole lot about this group or how it formed, how it's developed over the last year or so. So it's like, as soon as I'm kind of seeing this faction in its entirety, they're already breaking it up. So it's just kind of bizarre. Had Melina doing a promo on Camille, and she got like 3 sentences in before Chelsea Green came out to do her whacked out zombie bride shtick. Hey man, it's like I said in my NXT report. Something about crazy chicks in pro wrestling. It always seems like every company has to have at least one of them. We had Colby Corino and JTG versus Luke and PJ Hawks in the number 1 contenders tag team quarterfinals. Decent enough tag match with a couple booking quirks that really didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. As far as I can tell, I think this is my first time seeing a JTG Colby Corino tag match, so I could be missing a plot here, but are they really doing the tag partners that can't get along deal too? Are they not already doing this exact same story with Aaron Stevens and whoever his partner is? His name's escaping me. Kratos, I think, right? So why do you need another one? The other thing I didn't get here is why they decided to have PJ be the one to get the hot tag for the baby faces. And really, just the entire layout of this match was odd to me. First, PJ hot tagged Luke, and he ran wild for the heels for the baby faces for a little bit, and then Colby cut him off. And I was like, okay. And several minutes later, PJ gets the hot tag, and he's just running around like a house of fire all the way to the finish, and the Hawks hit a terribly botched assisted power slam combo for the win. But the reason the PJ getting the hot tag was so bizarre was that isn't he supposed to be a lesser experienced worker who's teaming with his dad to hone his craft and get better with experience? So wouldn't common sense dictate that he'd be the guy getting his ass beat for most of the match so his dad can bail him out? I don't know, seems like they were all over the place with the formatting of this match. I mean, by far the standout performer of this match was Colby, who, take one look at that guy's size and you're like, how is this guy dominating 70% of the match? Yeah, like I said, match wasn't bad, just weird. Had a brief Tyrus Austin Idol promo at the podium regarding Scion. Oh, and I guess I should point out that Jordan Clearwater and Black G's were there too. And when I say there, I literally mean they were just there. Everyone cut a promo in some form or fashion. Basically, Tyrus concluded with saying that Scion knows something about him, which gives him the impression that they might have history, but when it's all over, Tyrus is going to pull his mask off and reveal him for the fraud he is. So there's your homework, everyone, all you history buffs out there. Go try and figure out a former opponent of Tyrus that could possibly be hiding his identity under a mask. And I'll give you a hint. It's not Matt Bloom. Then we had Genocide versus Allison Kay, which was somewhere on the spectrum between clumsy and boring. I really didn't write much down here aside from the stuff at the finish. Lady Frost did a run-in. I don't know why, but she ended up costing Allison the match. So now the champs have to defend their titles against Terrence Crew, who I don't think has any affiliation with Lady Frost. Or perhaps that is foreshadowing. I don't know. Somewhere in here there was a La Rebellion promo that I started watching but had to stop and use the bathroom, and I never went back to finish my notes on it. Only thing of note I wrote down was, way to make your champs look tiny by putting May Valentine in between them. Good call. Judas versus James Storm. They wrestled for like 2 minutes. Storm whipped Judas into the corner, went up to throw some punches, and then the bell just rang. Presumably because Storm abused the fastest 5 count in the history of pro wrestling. Good. And then we had our main event of Crimson and Jeremiah Plunkett versus The End versus Pope and Trevor Murdoch. This is a totally random 3-way that lasted about as long as a mediocre lap dance. The big angle here was Trevor going up top for a crossbody dive and tweaking his ankle on the landing. They did some more stuff for a minute or so. Pope got slammed into the barricade on the outside. And fast forward to the end, Otison gets posted. Pope comes back in and hits him with the double knees to the back and gets the pin. And then post-match, Jax Dane brings out the virtue-signaling master referee to try and cash in his world title match. But as he's climbing into the ring, Crimson decks him with a single punch and knocks him ass over tea kettle. And then Kyle Davis, like a minute or so later, just goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, this match will not be happening after all." And I did not go back, but I almost swore I heard one single person in the audience let out one single boo, which I found kind of funny. But, yeah, big angle here with people coming down to attend Trevor while he was selling the ankle to close out the show. And that's pretty much how things ended. And whereas I would argue that Rampage was bad, I would say Powerrr was boring, uneventful. Main event was fun for the time it got, but I mean, it only went like 4 minutes. They had a couple okay story developments here with the Nick Aldis strictly business deal and the Trevor Murdoch Jax Dane angle at the end, but a lot of that middle of the show is a pretty tough sit through. And, when the show's only an hour long and you're struggling to get through it, it's really not good. So, by and large, a couple good angles, but yeah, really skippable in a lot of ways if you didn't watch it. And I know it kind of seems like I'm plowing right through the reporting this week, which is odd because I usually intend to go at least, 45 minutes to an hour with these podcast episodes. But yeah, the truth is I really just didn't have a lot to say about either AEW or NWA this week. Just not a whole lot going on. I mean, I guess in theory I could have ranted a little more about some of the stuff on Rampage, but I mean, show's only an hour, so it's not like I was gouging my eyes out when it was all over. Anyway, we'll close out the reporting this week with the G1 Climax, and nights 8 and 9 are the ones that I will be reporting on for this edition. The first B-Block show for night 8, or the first B-Block match for night 8, I should say, was Tonga versus Jeff Cobb, and that was a fun match while it lasted. Most of Cobb's offense is either slow, methodic beatdowns, or I'm just going to pick you up and carry you around for a while and throw you down on the mat. And especially when he's doing that to a guy like Tonga, he's got to be, 215, 220? I mean, I know it doesn't sound like much, but in this day and age, man, 220 is like approaching super heavyweight territory. The dynamics of this were kind of weird in the sense that Tonga actually would have made a good babyface in peril if Cobb wasn't such an awesome, ruthless, badass babyface too. Pretty much the entirety of the match was Tonga just getting beaten and tossed around until the last few minutes. And, if Cobb had any dislikable qualities, Tonga would have been the perfect underdog here. But, Cobb just got way too many likable qualities to be hated. Tonga made a pretty nice comeback at the end, went up for the big splash or a near fall, and finally Tonga goes for the gun stun. Cobb reverses it into a really sick-looking German, and then he hits Tonga with Tour of the Islands and gets the 3. So that puts Cobb at a perfect 4-0 with 8 points coming out of the show. And like I said, unless they're going with some drastic change here, it really does look like they're going to have Cobb go all the way to the finals to face Okada with a perfect record. Yeah, I know, spoiler alert for later on. Up next was Evil versus Chase Owens. Okay, serious question here. Again, you have to remember that I don't watch New Japan religiously, so maybe there's something I'm not keyed into here. Is this just like a G1 gimmick they do every year where Osaki, the ring announcer, has to take a bump in some form or fashion on every New Japan show? I mean, it's funny the first couple times, but after seeing it like 8 or 9 times, you're like, why do you even bother? Like, I mean, if I'm trying to think about this logically, why would this man not be suing the company for unsafe working conditions? I feel like you could get a nice compensation check out of that. Anyway, match was fine, but the booking made no sense to me at all. They did a deal where Dick Tongo and Evil tried to have Chase lay down so Evil could get the easy points, and, well, of course, Chase is like, fuck you, that ain't happening. But the reason this made no sense to me was that Togo didn't do this when Chase wrestled Tama Tonga. Like, is it a loyalty thing where Evil has higher priority over the other Bullet Club members? I'm genuinely curious about this. Like, I have no idea how this works. This isn't just exclusive to this block too, because the Bullet Club matches are also happening in the A block, and as far as I know, I have not seen a single Bullet Club versus Bullet Club match where, Jado was forcing someone to lay down for the other. So, yeah, I really don't understand what they're going for here. Like, I've never seen a circumstance where managers or wrestlers of some or the same factions or teams competing against each other are actively trying to fuck a partner over at every turn, regardless of whether or not they complied with the demand or not. Christ, there was a part toward the end of this match where Togo was choking Chase with a wire. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there like, how is Chase still part of the Bullet Club after this? I'd kick all these fuckers to the curb and be like, you want to cost me an opportunity to be world champion? You guys can go suck it. I guess at the end of the day, it made Chase a sympathetic character, but I don't really presume he's intended to be cheered going forward. So, yeah, I don't know what that was all about. Anyway, the finish here was Chase trying for a package pile driver, but Togo ran interference on the apron. Evil low blows him behind the ref's back and hits everything as Evil for the 3. Pretty predictable finish, but yeah, the match was fine for what it was. I really don't have a whole lot else to say about it. Third round match of the night was Yoshihashi and Taichi. Speaking of things I'll never understand about New Japan, the damn officiating. Yeah, it's one thing letting guys brawl outside the ring for like 5 minutes without counting them out. But why are guys just allowed to randomly and freely throw the ref around without being disqualified? I don't get it. I swear to God, I don't think either guy worked any part of this match in the ring for the first 5 minutes. And with most of the brawling, the ref just let it go. The guys are choking each other with shit. Taichi's stomping Yoshihashi's face into one of his tag belts. And ref's like, all right, guys, let's get in the ring sometime before the resurrection of Jesus Christ. It ended up being a pretty good match by the end. I kind of wish like the first 10 minutes were shorter, just cut entirely, and I'd probably be praising it a bit more. But man, the first 5 or so minutes, all that outside garbage just really dragged it down a notch or two. It's kind of funny too how Taichi goes from 1 minute working as a total babyface against Evil, and he's actually gaining support from the crowd, and then in the very next match, he's just a douchebag heel again, and people are totally heating him. I mean, I'll give him this. I'm not a Taichi fan by any stretch, but I mean, he's a versatile performer. He definitely has the skills to flip face and heel depending on the circumstances, and he does it well. He also sweats like a mofo, but that's irrelevant. Anyway, kind of built to the big dramatic finish of Yoshihashi fighting through the shoulder injury and getting the big upset win in the end. So, story was good here. And, Hashi getting his first win in the G1, that'll probably be a record they play up down the road. Semi-final for the night was Hirooki Goto versus Kazuchika Okada. A pretty storied history with these guys, so I think people were kind of expecting a dramatic match with a lot of counters and reversals and the whole bunch. And we did end up getting there by the end, especially in the last few minutes. But yeah, to tell you the truth, the first 2/3 of it was pretty standard. Both guys went back and forth for a while. No one really got any form of full control or domination over the other. They eventually build to a big sequence where they're doing reversals and counters, and to be honest, I just kind of rolled my eyes at a lot of that. Especially when they're doing things like working over body parts and limbs for the majority of the match. And then after guys getting dropped on those exposed limbs, they're immediately springing back up and hitting more moves. I just hate that shit. But anyway, the finishing deal was Goto getting caught by Okada, who ended up getting the win with a sunset roll-up. And Kelly did draw attention to the fact that it's Okada's first G1 win without using the Rainmaker, which I think he only went for once in this match, and he never hit it. I mean, I don't think anyone ever really doubted Okada wasn't going over. Obviously, Goto's been kind of SOL so far, and now he's 0-4 in the tournament. I don't really know where that all leads to, but I think I mentioned before how the announcers were alluding to the fact that Goto's really been off his game for the majority of the year, so maybe that's all part of a bigger story. Or who knows, maybe he makes some drastic comeback in the tournament. I don't know. Match was all right, but the predictability of Okada going over and the fact that most of the match was just an ordinary back and forth slugfest really didn't do a whole lot to draw me in. Definitely a good call to put this in the semi-main. And the main event of the night was Sonata versus Hiroshi Tanahashi. Can't really recall the last time I've ever seen guys milk the fuck out of a headlock exchange, but it's exactly what they did here in the first couple minutes, and man, did they make it look convincing. Good on them. They actually worked very similar styles for most of the match, and it ended up culminating in a real interesting story where, after the headlock exchanges, they both ended up targeting each other's legs with a series of dragon screws, and, that ended up factoring in pretty heavily for both guys as the match went along. Although Sonata did do a kip up on a bad knee, which did not go unnoticed for me. Anyway, they ended up building to the deal where both guys countered each other's finishing top rope moves, got their knees up on one another. They just crossed the 25-minute mark, and that is when Tanahashi immediately launched into the final gear, hit Sonata with a dragon suplex, got him with a high fly flow to pick up the win. Yeah, real good stuff there. I don't think I've ever seen a one-on-one match with these two. At least not that I can recall. They got pretty good chemistry with one another. Definitely match of the night, but I wouldn't put it on a list of must-sees or anything like that. And I usually hear from a lot of people that the middle portion of the G1 is always a grind to get through, either because the guys are hurt or they're trying to save something for later down the pike. So I get that. Overall, a fine show, but yeah, I definitely see where the lull period comes into play and can really affect the overall enjoyment of the tournament until you get down to the last couple shows. And that brought us to the following A-Block show with Night 9. Opening match here being a gift from God because Toru Yano wrestled a prelim match against Bushi, and I didn't need to watch it. So thank Lord I could skip that asshat and not have to endure his goofy antics. So I skipped right over into Kento versus the Great Ocon. And, well, first they cut promos on each other beforehand, and I understood a couple things they said. And by that, I mean not a goddamn thing. Not a whole lot happened for a good while, though. I mean, at least not anything of great impact or significance. Had the usual Kento stalling tactics, which were kind of projected and always overdone. We were told about halfway through the match that the promo that both guys cut before the bell was, I guess, some kind of acknowledgement promo where the loser of the match had to bow to the winner. I don't know why this stip was added, but okay, sure. I'm really grasping at straws for stuff to talk about here. I will say this, Kenta's got a hell of an open hand palm strike. Sounded like it hurt. There was a notable spot in the corner where Khan was just sitting on top of Kenta's head, and Kelly very comically states, "That's got to be such a humiliating position." I can think of a couple other humiliating ones off the top of my head. We, of course, had a ref bump. I feel like I see more ref bumps here in New Japan than I used to see on Nitro back in the Russo era. Kenta ended up laying out Khan with a chair, hit him with a double foot stomp off the top with the chair on top of him. Ended up grabbing a baseball bat. Khan yanked it away. Kenta took a bump. Ref tried to grab the bat. And Kenta rolled Khan up to steal the win. And for the record, no, Russo did not book that. At least, not that I can confirm. And then, of course, afterwards, Khan goes to tease that he'll bow to Kenta in the ring, but ends up snatching Kenta in the Tongan death grip and plants him with a choke slam. Generally, aside from my piss-poor attempts at amusement here, you could pretty much sum this one up as too many hokey shenanigans and an already way too long match. Then we had Yujiro Takahashi and Tongaloa. And, well, I guess this is a Bullet Club match that did not warrant anyone laying down for the other. Interestingly enough, it also had no Bullet Club interference for a change, which almost made the match a 5-star classic by default. Even so, I really didn't write a whole lot down. Mostly just Tongaloa beating Yujiro around for most of it, while Yujiro worked as a babyface in peril. He made a small comeback on Tonga at the end, and Tonga scooped Yujiro up to hit him with what Kelly referred to as ape shit. It was basically a modified Rikishi driver. Really nothing else to add there. That brought us to Tomohiro Ishii versus Zack Sabre Jr. Yes, please. God, I'll tell you, I don't know what it's like to fight for my life, but if I had to venture a guess as to what that might look like, I think I am going to use Ishii as a model for that. That dude looked like he was fighting for his life out there. Really dug the story they laid out here. Obviously, the whole deal going in was that Sabre was looking to rack up submission wins over everyone, so he immediately went in targeting Ishii's arm and basically tried to use any and all arm-based holds and submissions he could to tap him out. And that all played up the story throughout, that every time Zack went for a submission hold, Ishii would either find a way to break it or get the ropes. And all that led to a big Ishii comeback at the end. He ended up ripping off his elbow brace, laid into Zack with a big lariat toward the end, and ended up planting him with a brainbuster to pick up the win. And the finish was a real surprise to me. I really had thought they were going to have Zack submit everyone in the tournament to get to the finals, but no, they didn't do that. And to an extent, I'm kind of glad they went with something different, because I think if they ended up having Zack tap everyone out to get to the finals, it would have just been way too contrived and predictable. At least this way you're putting a couple stumbling blocks in his way to make sure he doesn't come off looking like John Cena or something. But man, this is a hell of a match. Real good stuff here from both guys. And I genuinely mean that. Good selling, good storytelling, great pacing. They're both so good at what they do. I really wish we had more guys like this on mainstream wrestling, because God, it would be great to see more matches like this instead of all the flippy McGillicuddies and greeny weenies we got working over here in the States. And that all led to our main event of Kota Ibushi versus Shingo Takagi. And man, do these guys have a tough match to follow. Started off pretty timid with both guys doing a brief feel-out process, but they ended up laying into each other relatively quickly once they got going. I never get squeamish watching Ibushi get dropped on his head and neck, but somehow this guy never ends up dead. I don't know how he does it. They had a sequence of kick exchanges around the halfway mark that looked brutal as fuck. Ibushi had a nice springboard dive on the outside that had a horrible landing for him. Dude smacked the back of his head right on the rampway. They ended up doing a bunch of false finishes toward the end. Ibushi hit Shingo with the first Kamigoye, but Shingo kicked out. Shingo reversed the second attempt, but Ibushi ended up reversing that into a poison rana, gave Shingo a Kamigoye to the back of the head, and then capped it off with a Kamigoye to the face and got the pin. Yeah, definitely got things rolling here once they reached the 15-minute point. Yeah, I don't want to take anything away from either guy because, I mean, they had a real good main event match here, but man, after that Ishii Sabre match, this is going to be a hard sell. And I just don't think it ever lived up to that previous match. But definitely worth the watch if you didn't catch the show. This and the Ishii Sabre match. Go out of your way to watch both of those matches. You know, and coming from someone like me who's one of the biggest critics of modern pro wrestling, believe me when I tell you, you won't be disappointed. You know, even if you don't really consider yourself a New Japan fan, watch these two matches because there's something there. You know, they're not Walter Ilya Dragunov level good or really even on par with the Kenny Omega Bryan Danielson match from Dynamite, but they're definitely matches you should go out of your way to check out. And by far, I mean, Night 9 was a much easier show for me to watch. Definitely the more enjoyable of the two nights. And granted, I cheated a little bit with skipping the Yano match, but I just feel like this A-Block show didn't drag as much as the Night 8 show did. You got one great match and a very good main event out of Night 9, and that's all I could really hope for. And that'll bring us to nights 10 and 11 for the upcoming Friday show, which seems like the formatting of these shows are unexpectedly working out in my favor. I really figured I'd get way behind with recapping the tournament, but as it turns out, they're basically running blocks in 2 to 3 day stretches that perfectly lap with the days I host a podcast, so good timing. Guys, if you want to check out my future content here on the FSWR channel, make sure that you subscribe and click that bell icon to stay notified of the 2 weekly uploads. Again, episodes drop every Monday and Friday, usually around early to mid-afternoon Eastern Time. Today's episode might actually get up by late morning, depending on how long it takes me to edit. Make sure you comment, check me out on the Chairshot, and also make sure you check me out on Rumble. Back on Friday for another round, and until then, take care all. Peace.